This episode was originally released on June 28th, 2023. Are you wondering why you're just hearing it now? All episodes release first and foremost on our Patreon page. You can become a patron at chillinois.net/Patreon. That's chillinois.net/Patreon. It only costs $3 a month. It's one of the best ways to support our show. And like I said, it gives you exclusive access to new episodes as they release. Enjoy the episode. It's mandated. Welcome. I guess before I got on, I should have asked you, do I call you Maid or do I call you Maddie?
Yeah, so I'm Maddie in person for sure. Made
Perfect.
content exists on the internet.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to kick off the conversation. Um, Now they know what to call you by. But go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience of the Chillinois podcast. And thank you again for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Madeline Scanlon, also Maddie, made content. And during the day, I'm the cannabis insight analyst for Brightfield Group. We are a cannabis, CBD, and emerging wellness market research firm. A lot of words there. And I've been doing that for 3.5 years now. But on the side, for fun, I started doing cannabis content stuff on Instagram. And that has grown to a pretty crazy level to now where I have a company with two other influencers where we do brand activations and other influencer content. So it's been a really fun time getting to go back to my event roots, what I used to do before cannabis, and plan some pretty cool networking, social events. But then also just be with the community. Seeing the data, especially during the whole pandemic, looking at all the data, seeing all these cannabis consumers, but all being isolated, it has been an amazing convergence of it all to be back and with the cannabis community.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well said. I want to talk to you about like what you are doing today, both like professionally, but also with regard to content. But I thought it would be really cool. And the reason I wanted to invite members of HiFo Media on individually is because I'd love to hear the backstory. So if you could tell me, I think it probably started with your introduction to cannabis, but tell me, how did we find ourselves where we are today?
Yeah, I mean, with high focus media specifically, I I wanted to make a collective of influencers. So I guess I did start it. I went around being like, who wants to be in an influencer collective with me? And basically, the issue I saw was coming from I have a master's degree in PR and advertising. So I know about influencer relations and influencer PR. And I didn't see cannabis influencers getting the same respect that other influencers got. So kind of just wanted to address that issue by having something where people are talking about the prices we're getting and what we're doing for free versus paid and all these things and how they all relate. But yeah, starting a company with more than one, two people was way it's much a harder task than I thought it would be. So now it is me, Nicole, and Shayna. We're not exactly a collective. There's three of us, but we definitely have ambitions to want to grow and be with a lot more influencers. Um, but content's just always been something I've been super passionate about. I was a kid on YouTube, like 12 years old, doing really dumb, embarrassing things that are probably still out there. So it has been always in me. And cannabis too. I'm a third generation cannabis user. So it is in my roots. I'm proud to be the first one that can say it though.
Very cool. Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for. I was curious to like, so it sounds like you've been creating content for a long time. Um, because I don't take you as being anywhere close to 12 anymore. So, um, but that's I was curious, yeah, if the content creation came first or the cannabis came first, and if it was a merging of the two loves or like how that came to be. That's kind of what I was going
I
for.
definitely was like a stoner in college. Like I became a stoner. I went to DePaul. I was getting my degree. I was high all the time. And I was like, damn, this is just like a thing. Like I got a master's degree high, you know? So it's not so, oh God, it's gonna melt your brain. You're not gonna be able to do anything. All that stuff got shattered to me. And I definitely
Mhm.
feel like I didn't know what I was doing getting my degree in PR and ad. I just knew it called me. and content in a sense falls in it. Now I'm like making content. I think everything is really public relations when you're interacting with the public. So it's all with the spin on it, I guess. I just watched The Crown where they call the PR people the spin doctors, and just like reminds you of where PR comes from. You're all it's like creating an image, but that's what the internet's all about, is creating an image, and you just gotta do it for good.
Yeah. So you started using cannabis in college, you said?
Yeah, when I was about 19, I was like, actually I
Was
had a
it
friend who moved in and we were like just stoning watching Rick and Morty, and that's how it happened.
yeah. I'm trying to place the timeline. Like, how illegal was it then? Was it like sketchy that you were smoking weed, or did it feel like
No,
pretty
it was
normal?
decrim. I joke around that like I never really existed in prohibition.
Mm.
Not, it's like I did smoke a little in high school, but like something in me was like, wow, I don't think I can do my goals if I'm smoking weed in high school. And so I stopped. I totally stopped when I tried a little bit when I was 15, and then like totally stopped when I couldn't do my homework high. And so I'm like, thank God, little Maddie, what the heck? Like that was a good life trajectory. So I came back to it when I was 19, much more ready for something like that.
Yeah, that was wise at your young age, to be like, hey, it's cool, but not for me, not now. Just not now.
Yeah, I wanted to be the valedictorian. I found out I was going to be the valedictorian of my class, and I was like, I like get rid of all my friends, stop doing drugs, stop drinking, stop doing anything. It was like friend all the smart people, and that's what it was. But that's how I saw weed, though. I saw weed as something that was like with partying, with alcohol, that would come back in my life when I was ready to party again. It definitely did not have any positive things, thinking it would be like a wellness daily part of my life.
So how did that change? Because you described in college, that attitude very much changed. Can you describe how you came to that change?
Yeah, like I used to be like a pretty mean person. Like I was like, pretty cutthroat, and all like when I was start in the beginning of college, I tried to be on the leadership of like four different major clubs of DePaul. And I was super go-getting, and we just like slowed that all down for me. I'd always been very hyperactive, and we just really made the world slow down in a good way for me, where I realized it's not all about competing, it's not all about being the best out there. It really just gave me this perspective that I don't think I otherwise would have found. And not that I think I'd ever lose that perspective if I stopped smoking weed, that's a big thing. But every day it just strengthens it, I guess.
Yeah, it's humbling. I think is that fair to say that you found like it kind of you said you didn't feel like you had to be first for everything, so it's kind of like brings you down a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
more perspective. Like what matters is
Hmm.
like just
Yeah.
being happy, not like everyone must be sad and I'm the only happy one. Mwahahaha. That's like how I was like in high school. I was very mean. I was a mean girl. I truly was. So I'm a recovering mean girl.
Yeah. Hey, look, I've never really talked about it, but I'm not proud of the person I was in high school either. So
Yeah, kids
it,
are
it
mean and terrible, and I can attest. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's important to own it because we've changed, and I realize it and I see it, and sometimes I'll like I've got people that I know, like family members that are in high school, and so you can see it, like they'll tell you about maybe something that somebody said to them in school, and it's hard to tell them like, hey, just so you know, you're living in the most cutthroat time of your life where people will just tell you shit that they, you know, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying though? They'll say stuff to your
Yeah.
face at that age and
Oh
just
yeah.
no like shame at all.
None. Oh, I can think of some crazy things. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I cringe at thinking about some of the things that I said to people or did to people. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a time I'm proud of, but I think what's important is that we learn from that,
The
you
weed
know.
helps like, hey man, chill out. Like at least
Hmm.
for me, it was like, no need to be that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's super cool. That's super cool. So you started smoking pot in college and found yourself kind of in the most cliche way, kind of chilling out. That's super cool. And so you said you studied like marketing and stuff like that,
Yeah, I got a bachelor's and master's in PR and advertising.
PR and
So
advertising. Sorry.
specifically, well, almost sometimes I wish I did marketing because that's a real business degree. So I have a communications degree. So it's really easy too. I did my bachelor's and master's in 4 total years. And I finished in 2019, so I was very glad because the pandemic hit. I was already done in the world,
Yeah, dude.
but yeah,
Hell yeah.
it I learned a lot of weird stuff. You learn PRs is repeating the same thing over and over again. So it's just like really learning how to like make people want to buy things and getting good at that.
Yeah. So with content creation, did you like stop? Because I will say that I feel like that was probably about the age that I had a decline, I would say. Like I was doing I about said climate change for some reason. I was doing content creation, um, through junior high and even before that, I remember just making videos, like you say, probably some that still exist to this day, just stupid, embarrassing stuff, wacky stuff. It's not like it was like crazy, but just silly kids being silly kids, filming pranks, right, stuff like that. But there was certainly like a time. I feel like it was around when I was that age that I stopped. Am I understanding you correctly that you just kind of did you just stop making content for a while, or did you just?
Honestly, it was for me, it was in high school because so when I was probably like 12, 13, 14, 15, when I was 15, I like decided I was going to stop doing anything that I really wanted to do and just do whatever it took to be valedictorian. Which like I used to do journalism, I used to do other things. I was always in band, I was always artistic that way. So like some way art has always stayed with me. But no, I really fell out of making any significant content for a long time. And even throughout college, I really only stuck to making the sort of content for schoolwork where it was, every quarter it'd basically be like, here's a brand or business or something, like make a campaign, and you'd spend the whole time making the campaign. So really I learned how to like I always had the desire to make content, but I felt very like, who am I? Who am I to do this? Like I'm now I got over that obviously, but it held me back for a long time. And I think once I had my degree, I was like, now I am now I can make, which is like silly to think of. But yeah, I started my Instagram content making on January 1st, 2020, when it's like fully legalized. And yeah, I don't it's like totally picked up something that I left behind.
So did you start with, because it was on January 1st, 2020, did you start with pot or like what?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to be a weed influencer. I knew about weed
Uh-huh.
influencers. I saw them on I had a personal Instagram and I was like, I want to do this. Like, I'm gonna wait till it's legal and then I'm gonna do it. Because I already had my job in cannabis for a couple months. So it was like, and I hid it. None of my people who were at my job back then knew about it. I was like, secret, not say anything. And now it's like too integrated. Everybody knows. But
Gotcha. When did you and how, let's talk about that. How did you find yourself at a cannabis company or a cannabis insight company or data company? What did you
yeah.
say it was again?
Yeah, it's like a market research company for cannabis and CBD and other industries now. But I was getting my master's and they were going to legalize weed and I liked research. I was doing a research project on AI and advertising. And everywhere I'd go, I would just be like, I like weed, I like research, weed research, weed research. And eventually somebody hit me up and like brought me over to a Brightfield thing and I talked to them for a bit. And then I graduated. I went around Europe for like 40 days and I would like text them while I was in Europe, like, am I gonna get a job? Am I gonna get a job when I get back? Like, are you sure? And they were like, yeah, we'll get you a job. But they didn't end up getting it to me till October. So I literally like graduated and I was just like waiting around and like, yeah, it would totally paid off. And pure through networking and meeting them and them being like, you know what, we're growing right now. And we could use someone who knows about social media. So my actual job was I was their first social media person. Um, and then they just were like, wow, you know a lot about weed. You're learning a lot. Why don't you come do some other stuff for us? So I've been on the inside side. I've been deep in the Excel. I've trained AI into what's a chillum and what's a one hitter and all this crazy stuff. So, and now I'm back doing the content marketing really in the outward facing cannabis insights.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'm trying to keep, if you notice, I'm trying to keep this chronological. So
Oh, yeah.
you've started at Brightfield, that's the company, right? And on January 1st, you started making content. Um, because you felt, hey, it's legal, right? That's what you said. That's why you kind of finally took the leap. You're like, it's legal, let's fucking do it. Take the
Yeah, there's
mask
like no
off.
reason not to. Yeah. It's like,
And the times now, right? To become a
mm-hmm.
content creator, you rather than start, 15 years down the line, you want to like kind of make yourself known now, right?
Yeah. And I also I thought I was gonna be like a comedy person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like if you ever scroll back on my early stuff, it's like really goofy. Like and I still like it, but the emergence, like I don't even know, emergence, convergence of me on the internet and me in my professional world has kind of made me have to be more serious. But
Okay.
I still try to keep it light.
Dude, I try to blend comedy into this thing as much as I can. Now we cover like a lot of serious stuff, but and I use whatever excuse I can to get comedians onto the show. So I have a huge love for comedy. That's awesome. And you probably saw that. It's something that I plan to do again in the future now that it's nice out again, but I made like a satirical reel quite a while ago
Yeah,
trying to
that was
blend.
awesome. I have watched
Yeah.
that many times. You
Thank
with the
you.
suit on, walking around the campus, being the MSO guy, like not knowing how to smoke weed.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
so
Thank
funny.
you. I can't take all the credit for the character. Justine, my girlfriend, helped me develop some of the lines there. But yeah, I would love to do more things like that where you're talking about real stuff but blending in the humor. I think it's very very effective in teaching. But anyway, sorry, I had to take a moment to dwell on the fact that you said you started with comedy because I'm just a nerd for that. So, um, is there a reason? Can I just ask that before we move on? Do you particularly like stand-up comedy or anything like that, or was it just you just like to be like that?
I always liked like skit comedy, so
Hmm.
I find it very funny to do like almost like I don't say non sequitur, but like unexpected like skits. So like one of my favorite things I ever made was I got a new bong and I said I'm gonna christen it, and then I like proceed to actually pretend to give it a baptism.
Yeah.
And it's like stuff like that. It's almost like it's like going crazy on a pun almost sometimes even just like and I love like I think you should leave that show that's on right now. It's
Hmm.
really just that like obscure humor. um and I don't know, I find like when you're on the internet you got to be there for a reason, you got to be something. And my original reason was going to be like to entertain. I like want to be I almost had myself be called made entertained. But I don't know. It's more than that, especially in cannabis. There's so much like education and being a data analyst too. It just kind of felt like even though I like doing that, I couldn't just be what I was.
Hmm. Is there anything behind the made content or made entertain? I noticed you have the format there, so
Yeah, well, my name is Madeline, so it's
sure.
Madeline. So it's
Hmm.
originally I was made line, so then made just became the thing. And like made is so like everywhere. Like people use that word every day in regular sentences. And so it's just like ubiquitous in a way. But also made content is also made content. So it's not just being entertained, it's being made content.
Like that. Nice.
Yes. Doesn't have to be so deep about content or anything, but it's
Hell
just the
yeah.
internet.
Hell yeah. Well, how's that been going? So you mentioned, and I'm kind of throwing two things at you at once. I realize this, but like you mentioned at first, you didn't maybe like the job, so you're still there. So I imagine you like it. But also, how's the content creation been going? You can start on either one. Like again, I know I threw two questions your way.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like I love my job in a sense where I get to like learn about cannabis every day, but I'm very sociable. And so I had to start just going outside of my job to do social things. Like so many of us can, for so much time we said like, okay, we get to go to the office 5 days a week and be around people and do the thing, but like the whole world changed, and so I had to kind of change how I was operating in it. So doing all this stuff on the side just like I think it got so big because I knew the insights of it, like knowing that people just really want a place to smoke, seeing the stats on how many people are smoking outside of bars when they're not even allowed to, and all that stuff, and being like, let's put this all together. So I should say that it's been going great. I mean, the content side hasn't been going so great. The brand activation side has. We everyone wants to be together now, and we're even seeing that in how cannabis brands want to interact. Like it's one thing to have an influencer say some stuff and do a campaign, and of course we still do little things like that, but like to have 250 people in a room and the brand is there part of that active, we call it the activation, but really it's just that social time, that social experience tangible, not on the phone thing, is really valuable right now. So High Focus Media is happy to fill that need.
Hell yeah. And yeah, you've been doing that. Feel free to plug some of the events, so that people can look into it. And we'll put it in the podcast description as well. But like Profesh Sesh, is that an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, Professor Sesh is our marquee event, we like to say. It kind of like got
That
right.
sounds super official.
I know, right? Well, we don't want it to like cannibalize us. A lot of people didn't even know what High Focus Media was. They just knew Professor Sesh, and we were like, oh,
Hmm.
we put our name on this. So yeah, but I think that it's even been interesting because we've started in February. So February, March, April, May, we had four of them. And we've seen a shift even from like just business people to like a lot more just cannabis enthusiasts and people who just want to be out and smoke with people. Not no, they don't want a job. They just want a place to be.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's super cool. And that's um what I felt I've noticed from seeing the posts is you've got a good turnout. So if folks are looking for a good time, I think
Well,
it's
it's
fair to
it's
say.
easy when you're giving out all the stuff we are. We work really hard to like make sure the brands are generous, make sure the venues are generous. It's like just have a good time, everyone. Like we're all back out in the world. Everyone wants to be here, and it's just making it where it's not a barrier. There's definitely a lot of spaces for cannabis consumers that cost $20 to $80, but we're really passionate about the free and under $20 to $30 type affairs.
Hmm. So talk about some of the cool things that have happened at former events. Like, is it fair to say that like I think there's been like product samples, for example, at events. Is that right?
Yeah, so some of our brand partners will be on the Sesh Bus, and the Sesh Bus is the mobile VIP lounge that's around here in Illinois, where we can compliantly park it on the street in Chicago, and brands can share some product, and people can enjoy it on the bus and bring their own. So it's been a good, and that's the thing that is kind of like hard about what we're doing. Like we love the bus. We're so grateful we can have this bus. But ideally we wish we didn't have to have a bus parked on the street to like smoke weed, especially at a venue like Park and Field where we were just at, where it's like
Right.
it's open. Everyone's around fire pits. There's already exhaust coming from fire pits. And there's like, it's like it's
It's
just something
silly.
it's something we're working on too. That's some of the stuff in the works in my life for sure.
Sure.
These rules we are not trying to have to deal with much longer.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully and you see some of the legislation that I don't know if it'll make the final cut, but there were things like for events, event licensing, temporary event licensing. I don't know if I have not seen the final text of the omnibus yet, but there's hope there, I'm saying, with those things coming around, right?
Actually, so the as it's currently written, we wouldn't want cannabis consumption in the omnibus bill, right?
Oh,
As
good.
it's as I see it, as we see it. So honestly, it's like I'm
Sure.
like teasing around the fact that forming a nonprofit to deal with cannabis consumption. It's called the Illinois Cannabis Consumption Association, or ICA. And it's me, my husband, and our good partner Depeche, who is the owner of Smoker's Glass. So he's intimately involved in the ancillary side. And just want to see a real lounge industry for Chicago and for Illinois at large. And it
Yeah.
needs its own advocacy.
I just realized I have a photo with the people from ICA. Wasn't
Yeah, you
Depeche
do.
there?
Yeah, we were there,
Yeah.
like scoping things out for ICA, and we had
We were beta testing
yeah,
the consumption. I'm just
we
joking.
were. And if a cop came by, we would like to have an ICA fund even to possibly like pay for like people who smoke in public. It's like a $50 fine in Chicago. It's like ridiculous. Like there's just so many things that could be changed. And since
Yeah.
we've legalized, we've seen lots of different examples. Minnesota is gonna like blow us out of the water too. So there's just so many reasons why Illinois, though it may have screwed up the cannabis side, maybe it could have a good lounge side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, that kind of opens us up for just a general discussion on data. I'd love to hear anything that you'd like to talk about, but I was just curious since you brought up the $50 citation, do you have specifically like any data on it? I've never looked into it honestly, but I have heard of it being an issue, like you say. I mean, you can't smoke in public. It's definitely like not okay. And I was just curious, like, do we know um if CPD is like actually enforcing this? I hope not.
So
but
I don't think it's something I've necessarily like heard or seen. It's just the fact that they have these mechanisms
the
is what
ability,
makes
right?
it like not cool. Like for example, say a group of people wanted to do a beach meetup this summer and they'll
Hmm.
announce it when it happens. But what happens if our people decide to free willingly smoke some cannabis? Like whose fault is that? Is it the no event can occur if they have a risk of any of their patrons
Right.
using cannabis in a public space? Like there are just so many things that make it hard to do things. I know, make it hard to be compliant because people don't want to break the law. It's just they're making these laws so onerous and annoying. It's like forcing some
Yeah.
sort of loop around.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like when I was hanging out with you and all the folks that we were smoking with, I'm trying to think, there was a lot of people. I wasn't even really thinking about it. And in fact, I need to be more careful about it because I found myself doing that. I think I was doing it in Nashville one time and people were like, Cole, weed is like illegal here. I was like, oh shit. Like I just go in autopilot sometimes. I definitely have to be more cognizant of it. But yeah, that's what I find is that, and that's what's so troubling about the fact, like you say, that they're just, even if they don't enforce it, the fact that they're able to, that's what's troubling. Because most people may not know; they just think it's legal, right?
Yeah. And I know
So,
you're of the opinion too of weed as an agricultural good. So
mhm.
it's definitely like, okay, how is this thing legal if we can't use it anywhere at all except a house we own?
Right.
Like, and then in the house we own, we can have none of the plants unless we register under a medical condition.
Hmm.
It's like it's weird. Like I use cannabis medicinally, but I only keep a medical card to grow.
Yeah,
It's like,
I think
okay, state, here you go, money, money.
it'll really be interesting to see how this evolves because one of the questions I've always had, and then I'd love to swing it back to you for any general data insights that you might want to share. I'm sure there are some fun numbers that you've got crunching over there, so I'd love to hear anything. And I have one idea where we could kick it off, but um, oh no, did I lose it? I think I just lost it. We can switch to data points if that thought comes back. I was going to say I recently saw, I don't know if it was on LinkedIn or on Made Content, but you shared an updated number of which I've seen in the past. Maybe you can pull it up. Sorry for not prepping you on this, but the disparity of population to like people to dispensaries. I always
Oh
thought that was a
yeah,
really
yeah. That
cool
was me
disparity.
creeping around on your Reddit channel or your Reddit
Oh,
thread.
really?
I'm trying to become a Redditor. I don't know what's going on. I got off of TikTok a while ago and now I need a new
Uh-huh.
platform. I feel like Reddit might be it for me.
Hey, well, you're
But I
talking to
got
the
like
right
three
person.
karma. I got like three karma. Nobody likes my shit. Every 10 minutes I'm there clicking a freaking comment. Nobody likes me. No, I'm kidding. But um anywho, yeah, that's an article I wrote a bit ago. So actually, Michigan has lost a lot of dispensaries since October. So it
Hmm.
is a little less like crazy of a difference, but it's still pretty crazy because Illinois is not open dispensaries like it was supposed to, just straight up. Like when I first started 3 years ago when we sized Illinois and Michigan's market, Michigan was supposed to be smaller than Illinois. Illinois was going to be way bigger than Michigan, if not by now, at least by next year. But that's not going to happen now because we have not been able to have the growth that was set up in the market. So, like, of course, when you forecast the market, you take the state at its word that it's going to do what it said it's going to do. But when that doesn't happen, and obviously COVID and things like that too, it just really drastically changes um, what's gonna occur. So now Illinois really will only see more growth through new operators, new dispensaries. We just took the first ever like stagnant month year over year and a 420 month of all months while Michigan continued to grow over like 70 something percent over the last April.
Hmm.
And Missouri eats into our sales because they have like a 6 or 12% sales tax, I think, depending where you are. And then so people were driving one way, now they're driving the other. So there's, that problem for Illinois. But it's definitely just to be a cannabis analyst anywhere in the Midwest is one of like the roughest. I've got to watch this limited license market like grind out. I guess one of the worst other place would be Florida.
Yeah, no, straight up, straight up. Um, I'm curious. I don't even know how you would find the findings. But maybe this is something that we you could follow up with me on. There's this article that I love to share on the show, and I'll just share it so that people can read up on it if they've never heard me mention it on the show before. But you just brought up limited licensing. So this is a really good old article. I think it's from the year 20 leading up to legalization, 2019. Yeah. So I'm gonna flip this back into reader mode. I'd be interested to see if your folks are able to get a hold of this data. Again, I don't know how you would, honestly. But the article is talking about medical cannabis growers who are lobbying for licenses, which would also allow them to control the supply of recreational cannabis in Illinois. And there's two studies in this referenced, and I think it'd be interesting to have somebody get a hold of this data if at all possible. Hold on a second, I gotta find. So there was, a study that was commissioned by the sponsors of the bill, Heather Staines and Kelly Cassidy, that showed market demand in Illinois would quickly outstrip supply from the state's existing licenses. Oh, and then this is the other one I was thinking of. Illinois NORML. This is under their old leadership though. So that's why I think it might be hard to get some of this data. Like, how do you get a hold of these people? But they released a draft study on supply and demand. And then, of course, the current the medical cannabis growers released their own supply and demand study. I'm curious, like what it what was the outlook, I guess, on the market? You mentioned like the CRTA and the license that it had allotted. Like, is there ever I know this question is kind of like tough, but is because you brought up taxes earlier and everything. I don't feel like taxes are the only reason that people are going to Missouri. I feel like the products are just cheaper in general. And so I guess the question I'm working towards is, does your analysis show that even at full capacity, we would be there? And I don't even know if you could go there because it's the people that set the prices, but I'll stop talking and let you answer the question.
I think like there's a lot of things. So like
A lot of stuff. Yeah.
there's no answer as to how much cannabis a population needs. That's one thing.
Right.
So a lot of data sources like to rely on point of sale data. And that's one thing that's unique about Brightfield is we are not point of sale data. We are not looking at what's being sold in cannabis stores. We are asking people who use cannabis what's going on, regardless of where they buy it or where they got it or who gave it to them. And so it's a very unique view of the cannabis consumer. So it's like hard to say how much cannabis a population needs when so much of these studies result or look at other medical markets, possibly like estimates of illicit markets. And I'm not saying that data is not good. I personally don't do the market sizing. We have a really great market sizing expert who sizes all of our markets, he even sized the freaking Delta 8 market, which is like, how did you do that, man? But methodology, I guess. But but basically I think like if you look at Illinois and Michigan, we opened a month apart. A month apart. And it's the question of what is going to determine the supply, the government or capitalism. Like at the end of the day, we live in capitalism. People are going to pay money for things they want, and if somebody's got a better deal, they're going to take their money there. And so if that's shaking out actively in Michigan at the expense of the business owners, like they're the ones struggling. Like I said, 100 dispensaries have closed since October, around about, while here in Illinois like 19 have opened when we were supposed to have 190 open. So like which one you want, which side of it? It's like Michigan consumers are enjoying a whole new level of access. Their illicit market is actively disappearing because if the ounces in the store are $25-$30, where is there room for an illicit market? And obviously they have a lot of issues with their caregiver program going away that kind of helped facilitate get off illicit into a semi-formal and now into a super formal that Illinois never had. So it's hard to totally compare. But at the end of the day, we have a supply issue. You can see it in the price of our vapes. It's very clear. And what would help a supply issue? More people growing. So like limited license system is just not shaking out economically for us. We're making less money as a state than probably even Missouri, just seeing how it's shaked out for them. And because not to say like Missouri, St. Louis is a big city, but big cities are hubs for illicit drugs. And so if there aren't, states like even Montana are having huge, awesome openings because so many consumers are coming to cannabis not from an illicit dealer, or the illicit dealer is super hard to reach, and now even the dispensary 30 miles away is easier and safer and whatever. Where states like Illinois that have these population hubs where there's quite illicit infrastructure, it's just different. It's just different. That's a really long answer, but
No, I loved it. I mean, it's so true in so many ways, and I think it's just important to note that I think that so one of the numbers before I get to that, Michigan I think sold 1.8 billion dollars in cannabis last year, and Illinois sold 1.5. So they
yeah.
sold more, and it's funny because everybody in Illinois, and I say everybody, I say opponents of the open licensing system will say that Michigan is a failure because of their
Yeah.
open licensing system, right? And it's like, but they're making more money. What's
Oh,
going
they're
on there?
making more money. Yeah, it was people like to point to the small businesses that are failing while ignoring the small businesses in Paw Paw and Benton Harbor that are like genuinely just raking in money, like ridiculous. Like I go to Michigan. I'm an Illinois consumer that spends most of their cannabis dollars in Michigan, and it's just why they can't keep the same ounce on shelf when I left my house. It's like where in Illinois, there's complaints of like old weed from like October being regularly what's available.
Yeah.
So it's like we
And it's
we
just
we're reaping what we sowed in this limited license laws that were somehow accepted.
and I mean that's exactly it because I'm not even throwing shade. I think everybody expected it, but the leader of the Illinois Craft Grower Association came on and said that we should expect to pay more for craft cultivated product, not only because it might be a tough thing to get it at the medical cannabis tax rate for some reason, even though the state has come on this show and said that there would be no issue.
I saw they're going
Apparently,
to
they're
remove that too from the omnibus just today. So,
really well,
mhm.
great.
I know.
Um, so the that whole thing, right? And look, I get that you should actually expect to pay more for a craft product anyways, but I'm saying people aren't waiting for higher priced product. People are waiting for a price break. People are fleeing for a price
Hmm.
break. You
Hmm.
know, I just,
And Illinois has been interesting. Like every time, it's not our prices have dropped a little, not in a way that is so noticeable and significant, but like they have dropped when big sales times happened, and then people almost just like expected it as this market has dragged on. So like last December, there was a big drop. People were I was even watching to see if this 420 would be a big drop. I don't know if it has yet. It's hard to say. But like you regularly are seeing $35 eighths pre-tax on menus. And like that's not the ideal, but at least we're here, at least we're here. But it's still
yeah.
it's you're right. It's like if we're just now getting to a genuine bottom tier, not counting shaken popcorn. Like come on, let's get real. A genuine bottom tier for bud it does not exist because everything's priced like it's mid or premium.
Hmm.
So how can a real premium exist? Like there's gonna have to be like a shifting of it, but I don't know if that'll happen just because of
And it
um
sounds like market participants prefer, like they view limited licenses as an investment. You know what I mean? You know,
oh yeah, there's definitely so like that was something that was a big takeaway from the summit where we were with Grown In, thinking about the difference between is it social equity or is it price stability? That is my question. Is a lot of the answers to, well, why should people only be able to get involved under these parameters seem to be more about keeping the price of cannabis where it is rather than genuinely creating like an equitable way of entering.
yeah. And I think there's something to be said about not addressing what started the process in the first place. And it's part of what you brought up. You can't even fucking smoke it in public. That's got to change, right? That's part of what started this in the first place. Like the disparate policy enforcements is what I'm referring to. And those all still largely exist in Illinois. Um, You know what I mean? Anything over 30 grams for most people. And I love to use the example for out of staters. It's insane that you can only have 15 grams if you're not from Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it even just harder to buy from for our out of state people. Like Wisconsin's gonna start going to Minnesota. Like they're you know what I mean? People from Wisconsin will, because
Hmm.
they're everyone in the Midwest is such a weird place right now because it's like every state is taking like almost like they're trying to out liberalize each other, it seems, in different like Minnesota at least is taking this approach where I'm just like, we might have cannabis drinks just in liquor stores for real? Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And like here we are in Illinois, like wondering if can might be in stock. And I can't even drink can. It does nothing for me. So it's
Is
like
it like an edible or something?
can is a drink that is like 2 milligrams. It's
Oh.
for microdosers. And it's like one of the only packs of drinks available in Illinois.
Hmm.
So it's like these markets across borders are just going to be so drastically different. It will continue to expose how flawed the Illinois market really is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just to put a cap on the point that I just brought up, if it wasn't clear enough for folks that are listening or even like for you, I like to just show the first few sentences from the CRTA itself,
Hmm.
uh, which says, in the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crimes, the General Assembly finds and declares that the use of cannabis should be legal for persons 21 years of age or older and should be taxed in a manner similar to alcohol. It also says that it should be regulated in a manner similar to alcohol. I ask you this, is that true?
No way.
Right.
No way. It would be like Canada if that was the case. Like, if you ever want to see an example of a government-run cannabis market that is actually doing pretty decently for its consumers, it's Ontario. The
Yeah.
Ontario Cannabis Store is like, if you're an innovator out there, just go to the Ontario Cannabis Store and be like, what's new? And you'll see the most innovative products at really reasonable prices for people with a variety of brands. Canada has its problems. Not gonna say it doesn't, but for the consumer wise, look at any other market and you'll see why Illinois consumers don't have it off very well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so interesting to hear how many people are going to Michigan. They're just finding that it's the better option. Like myself included, I know some shops I can go to because it's a better experience too. You can smell the product, you can see the product, and it's like everything, like you said earlier, an agricultural experience should be. Like when I go to buy grapes, I like to feel them. I don't know about your technique, but I feel them and I might even pop one in my mouth just to make sure like it's,
Wow.
good before I get a batch of grapes. Right?
Yeah. You don't, the first dispensary, one of the first I ever went to was in Colorado, and I got that deli style
Yes.
experience, as they call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it was the probably still one of the best consistencies of weed I ever had in my whole life. It was amazing. And yeah, it's just like why do we force getting back to like even just why they can't open dispensaries, like we have to have mesh metal in the walls just in case somebody wants to break in, and like just all this crazy onerous stuff for something that is a plant.
Yeah.
It's a plant.
Yeah. Now, look, I always try to be fair, and since you are a data analyst and you
Yeah, I gotta
might
be fair
have
too. Allegedly.
right. I wanted to just ask, because even Brad Spearson at the event we went to, somebody asked a question about limited licenses. It wasn't me. I promise you, it wasn't me. You were sitting next to me actually when I asked my questions.
Yeah, I remember.
Um, so, but somebody asked about it, and he made a comment about, well, look in Michigan and look how many people are going out of business. And you mentioned it earlier. Um, I'm just honestly and asking in the sake of fairness, is there something to be said about guaranteeing the success of cannabis licensees?
Yeah, I think that it's something that you can attempt, but Illinois has shown that the government is not really able to do that. It's like the will of the people, the will of capitalism and businesses who know how to do what they need to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Is that's all that's gonna win.
Yeah. It's crazy. I talked to, let's call him an unlicensed operator the other day. Let's just call him that. If you guys
Absolutely.
want to
Yeah.
check out the show, because that's what he is. I mean, he's operating in the state of Illinois, but they refuse to, or he's unable to, whatever you want to say, get a license. And so what he talked about, which I found interesting, is that he has to wear so many hats. And by that he means, he has not to not only be good at growing good like flour, good quality flour and supplying COAs and everything that the legal market offers, right? But he's also got to figure out, how do I make extracts? How do I make edibles? And he has to be the best at it. Otherwise, people will not come back to him. You know what I mean? He is facing the true spirit of competition. And like you say, I think there's something to be said about that, you know?
Yeah, like I think about when I was in college, I could make like the shittiest weed brownies ever and sell them to the kids in the dorms because there was no competition. You know what I mean? Like these were
Mm-hmm.
freshmen and I was the only freshman with an apartment. So it was like market opportunity. But like
Yes.
that can't be the market forever. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like that mentality from the illicit market of like, this is my turf, like carried on to the legal market, which doesn't really make any sense. And I am all for social equity in a sense that there people who have been affected by the war on drugs should be able to receive resources to participate in this industry, but it shouldn't be where now only these people are able to participate and the growth and success of our market are contingent on it.
Yes.
It's just very strange, and it's a lot of, especially for a population we are already saying has been disadvantaged by a system, to then have to come up with millions, bajillions of dollars. It's just very
That's always been
counterintuitive.
the thing for me right there. Yeah, that's not only are we giving, allotting this for them, but the amount of funding a person that was
Yeah,
supposedly, and I'm not questioning whether any of the licensees were actually affected by the war on drugs. I'm asking an honest question. If these people were affected by the war on drugs, is it fair to expect them to be as capitalized as they obviously appear to need to be, right?
yeah. To make those the provisions for them to be involved is what's ridiculous. And I'm all for making sure a market isn't monopolized, which we haven't done a good job of doing, but I'm all for it. But think about Massachusetts as a great model where they're doing like, I think it's 3 dispensary license caps. So you can't, or even I think it might be just 3 types of licenses in
I
general. It might
believe
be
that might be the
something like
case.
that.
Yeah.
So that makes it where if you're a big dog, come on in, do your thing, do it really big in one spot, and you're a big dog and you're making your big dog money. But then if you're a small dog too, you can come in as well and have your own area and do your own thing. And to me, when you have a system that genuinely allows people to get involved who want to be involved, who maybe aren't on this paper point system affected by the war on drugs, but still lived in a prohibition world and had it affect their life in different ways, like why can't they be involved too? Is like
Right.
the market shows there's the demand to have enough room for everyone, but we don't have an abundance mindset in our cannabis market. Not to get too spiritual, hippy dippy, but but it really is.
No, in fact, again, people warn against an abundance. I'm about to show a video that literally the title of the video is "What Happens When a State Grows Way Too Much Weed." What are you talking about, way too much weed? There's no such thing as way. Like you said, is there really too much weed? Um, and it highlights on a point that you just touched on. But I wanted to give a quick shout out to regulators like Shalene Title, who I believe could be credited for crafting regulations that you just referred to in Massachusetts. And they also, like you said, exist in Illinois, but the numbers are different. So do
Mm-hmm.
you know the numbers off the top of your head?
I think
I
it's
think it's
10
10 for,
dispensaries.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then 3 for cultivation. And I think it might even be 3 for craft cultivation, but I start to question myself because I saw that like just yesterday or the other day, there was some language that was modifying that so that you could. So again, I'm confused on that, but 10 and I think 3 is the number. Um, so I wanted to play a short clip to kind of illustrate the point that we were both just talking about, and it's a clip from Vice, who I guess just declared bankruptcy, RIP. Um,
Oops.
so here we go.
Maybe we should have put some caps on production.
You might win this one. All right, it sounds like a lot.
Do you look back at it and think maybe we should have put some caps on production or on the licenses?
You know, my job's not to second guess that. I'm just the administrator. But if you're asking me, I don't think so. Everyone just wanted to be the first in, to have their stake in it, and they were willing to take the risk to be a part of that market. So I don't think that's necessarily bad. And in a control market, they'd be left out. They'd never get that chance.
You think all
So, that for background, I should have given a little bit of background before I dove right into that. That was the head of the regulatory body for cannabis in Oregon, who people constantly point to Oregon as a failure. And what they were about to segue to, and this is really, I feel like, the dilemma that we've been circling the drain on. And this has been a really fun conversation so far. So thank you for nerding out with me. The drain I think we're circling, and it's what this video is about to segue to, is there's one group of people that will never complain. You know, there's a group of people that will complain about the low price of weed, and that's people that are trying to make money on weed. But there's one group of people that will never complain about the low price of weed, and I think two of them are on this call right now.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like consumers and people who want to see the industry grow too. I mean, if you think about like so Oregon is an example. We do not know how much weed a population needs. Like we just don't. They grew too much. Canada too.
Yeah.
Canada grew too much weed. And that had to do with expectations around possibly being able to export it too. So that's like, you know, got some complications. But like a lot of weed and even a lot of hemp has been grown and been wasted. And we're like, what do we do with this all? So there is no answer on both ends. How much do we need? And it's also hard to, you know, figure out when these illicit markets are like nothing else we've ever faced in any other industry, and there's nothing to draw a parallel to except when, you know, think about prohibition, I guess. But even then, it's the amount of years of prohibition cannabis faced and the infrastructure that is created worldwide cannot be ever compared to alcohol. So, but the one thing I think is crazy, so we have like to get into some data. We do a lot of like things around brand health, and that's like a idea of like how aware and purchasing and loyal are consumers of your brand. And we did one specifically for retail brands. So Brightfield Group is doing this like every quarter now. And in Illinois, the top reason for someone's favorite dispensary is the location by far. By like 46% of consumers say it's the location. And that's not good when you're gonna have dispensaries popping up all around and be in a lot closer locations for a lot of consumers. And you want a place like Oregon, and that the location is still important, but by significantly less, more than 10 percentage points, 12 percentage points, I believe. And then customer service is the second most important by a pretty close margin. So like different things become important when markets are actually able to compete with each other. It's actually able to serve a consumer and not just be the dispensary, the place where the government makes sure you can buy your weed. It's just a very different mindset.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What are some other things that like you feel like maybe people don't pay enough attention to? Again, you did, and I don't feel like. So sorry, I realized I referenced by what you said that I must have referenced an old article where you were citing that disparity. Do you have that number? That's what I had meant for you to share, because I thought it was pretty powerful, even if it's no longer accurate. It's not like it's changed a lot. You know what I mean?
Well, it's really just about like, so dispensaries per capita.
Thank
The
you.
more
That's what it is.
dispensaries there are, the less consumers have to go to them. So it's like in Illinois, let me get the exact number. In Illinois, there is one dispensary per every 115,000 residents. So that's a lot of people having to go to one dispensary. So that affects our market, and that like that's a lot less competition. Like you can support a dispensary well on that many people, where you never need to offer a baked good ever. It's like something I see out there in Illinois. But in Michigan, that was at one dispensary per every 15,900 residents. So more than about 100,000 people difference, just under 100,000 people difference at the peak of Michigan's dispensaries.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that is insane. That is insane. I was just looking up the per capita of McDonald's and stuff like that, just for some obviously apples to oranges comparisons, but
Yeah, I
oh
just shared the article with you too. And then like the takeaway was like Illinois and Michigan, like those things people care about. In Michigan, they care about location and variety of products much less because it's the standard. Where in Illinois, you have to care about the variety of products and where your dispensary is based on the lack of variety and locations.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I've talked to some people in Michigan that have, curious if you've ever, I'm just sharing for folks that are reading, we'll have this link to the podcast description so you can take a deeper dive. Um, I've talked to some small businesses in Michigan, and it's interesting. I ask them, hey, people in Illinois all the time complain about how ruthless an open market would be, but yet here you are, and here I am. I come out to support you for the very reason that you are a small business. How do you do it? How do you make it? And the one company that I'm referring to, I'll gladly give them a plug because they're awesome. Always treated me well. Disabled veteran owned and operated. Like I say, a small business in Michigan, Symponia Farms. They're vertically integrated. Now, I will say that I just gave credit to Shalene Title earlier, and one of her proposals specifically, she says that we shouldn't allow for vertical integration because it could lead to something like a monopoly. She's got a paper on how to prevent monopolies. That one regulation you mentioned, the per ownership limitations, is one of the ways you prevent a monopoly. Not limiting the number of licenses is another way you prevent a monopoly. But
True, yeah. Not actually making a monopoly.
Right, exactly. So it's this, I say that in the same breath because I realize that conflicts with her proposals, and she's somebody who I idolize and I generally agree with her proposals. But from a business standpoint, I got where they were coming from. They were saying, I don't rely on the outside market. I don't have to buy it from this guy, that guy, this guy. I make all my stuff in-house. I can set my own prices, make sure I get my returns. I know how much everything costs me. And I'm like, man, this seems like the answer to the problem that people know is limited licensing. Now, again, I say that in the same breath as Shalene Title saying maybe we shouldn't allow for that. Maybe I can ask her about that in the future. But yeah, I'm just curious. What do you think about the idea of that I just kind of laid out?
Yeah, I mean, I am all for vertical integration. I think that there's a hot take out there. This is not my hot take. This is a hot take out there that basically says that retail outlets are the middlemen of cannabis that need to be destroyed. That they are the ones that, because we have the place it is dispensed, we get to mark up and make our money here. So if that is controlled by the same people making the product, that markup is a little less fierce is the argument. So I don't know exactly if that's the answer. It's a very hot take.
Sure.
It's just to call dispensaries the middlemen, but they're not wrong. Like there are dispensaries that make no product and only buy product and dispense product, and they exist.
I mean,
to
and they
be,
almost quite literally are the middlemen. They just
yeah,
dispense it, So
exactly. And the way that we have cut up cannabis so that everybody gets a piece of this pie, is make leaves a lot of places to let capitalism go pretty wild and let people set prices however they would like, and not in ways that are necessarily democratic. I consider myself a democratic capitalist. I believe that if we let capitalism do its thing with government also doing the thing that we'd like, that we'd have a really good world. So it's like we on both ends it's hard. And I'm not saying like our limited license system is a product of like socialism or anything, but controlling the supply of something from the government and making sure there is limited people taking part, like
it's the closest thing we have to communism in Illinois. You're right. I
yeah,
mean,
it is. And so it's like not like that I think that's one of the reasons why it's so contrasting, because we are at
yeah,
the end of the
I
day.
felt weird, by the way, saying that too, but it's just like you kind of got to say it. It's the government
Yeah.
kind of
And
owning the means of production,
my husband is really, really into reading about like Lenin and things like that. He's like a Georgist, which is a whole other form of thinking about the world. So he likes to just see what are the other thoughts. And it's just like, it's crazy how similar some of these thoughts are to cannabis. It's eerie.
Well, we
Yeah.
need to get him on sometime. So,
Yeah, once
Um,
ICA is all formed and all, we'll definitely have more to say on the Illinois consumption advocacy happening.
cool. Yeah, please keep us posted on that. It's something that I hold near and dear to my heart, what I consider to be the true spirit of legalization. I feel like we lost what I don't know. I just feel like it's like a trick of words that we played. We're like, it's legal, but it's not that legal.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
like it's legal for businesses. Like we forgot about
Correct.
people. And I
I
think that's kind of what ICA wants to be, is like we want to fill that hole where we want to advocate for the people, not for businesses. Maybe no matter who owns the businesses, like some people are going to figure that out, but nobody's even trying to advocate for consumers to consume. Not
mhm.
even make sure we have good products. I'm just trying to say consume it.
And I love to just use the law to prove its own point. I think that is precisely
Yeah.
why it's just called the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. How can we regulate it and tax it? You know, and there's very little direction on how to allow people to consume it legally. It kind of like says, oh, you could be a consumption lounge. And that's what's weird. There's locations in Southern Illinois that aren't even dispensaries that have opened as consumption lounges.
Oh yeah. I can tell you all about that. So
Tell us about it.
well, you can open a consumption lounge in Illinois if you are a freestanding smoke shop and you derive 80% of your profits from such affairs. So it's a really clunky system. Like if you're a cannabis, you're essentially a hospitality. You're part of the hospitality industry. You're a place where people can sit down and do something, and we're forcing it into a retail space and making them make their money off of retail tobacco sales. And then who's enforcing this? That's the question. I'd love to know if the lounges that have opened up down south are being asked to prove that they're not getting more than 20% of their profits from lounge activities, essentially. And that would be anything from like the food, the entertainment, the door fees, anything like that is supposed to be within this 20% margin. So anyone, there's an argument to be made that okay, now we have a system to do smoke shops in the lounges. Let's just lobby the townships to make them zone these things. But who's gonna invest in something like that? This clunky thing. And there's definitely ideas. And I know there's a place opening in Tinley Park that's going to be a like an Dave and Buster's esque smoke lounge using the smoke shop regulation, but like,
Right. That's
how
where
are we getting around this?
I just wonder how you make money off of it, because if you can't like it almost, well, I'm not trying to like give the dispensary ones more credit than that, but it makes sense if you can sell weed there too, right? Because
But
that's where you're making
the
money.
one that exists in this state is not necessarily a profitable entity, I guess is
Mm,
what I'll say.
cool. Yeah, I mean, not surprised, honestly. Not
Yeah.
surprised
And it's hard
there.
because when you can't do anything but sell cannabis, and like how much cannabis can you consume in a 2 hour sitting? Like every time I go
Sure.
there, I only buy an eighth. And it's like I usually go buy the cheapest eighth too, just to be, because I'm a price conscious consumer like most other people. So it's
You bring up the idea of an arcade, though. I feel like that's a brilliant idea, because what I was trying to say is I struggle to think of ways you can make money on, like you want people to come, like, but how do you also like make money off of it without it feeling too exorbitant? Because a bar,
oh,
like people will go to a
absolutely.
bar, but yeah,
I think there'll have to be a combination of changing the law so you can have food
right,
and entertainment, and even non-alcoholic drinks. I think one of the other big trends that I've seen through our just Gen Pop data is the amount of people who are like not using alcohol after the pandemic and continuing to not use it and distinctly saying they're using cannabis instead of it. And Gen Z is at like 50% of them saying that they're using more cannabis than alcohol, which is like unprecedented and ridiculous. And like it's not going down either. Like we've been watching it every quarter being like, well, but I'm like, me too. I've been drinking alcohol since 2020. So it's like I am the trend. But these people still want to like sip on something. They don't want to just be like smoking and being like, it's like there are
sure.
opportunities, but the state won't let us do it. They're making us just like, could you imagine if every time you wanted to smoke, you had to go buy a bowl or a tray or a grinder? That's basically
Right.
what the system is setting up now. It's like this assumption. It's like a no knowledge of how cannabis consumers actually interact with the plant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really well said. Um, yeah, it seems like we're approaching this without knowledge of like let me put it this way. It's like we've obviously figured this out already. Like people have been doing this,
Yeah.
just maybe not as a legal business. So it's like, how do we, there's got to be a way to make it that easy. You know
Well,
what I
it's
mean?
hard
Like you
because
have
there's
smoke
not been
sessions.
a lot of them. There's not been a lot of lounges. Like I think that Las Vegas now is probably gonna have a cool lounge industry. Michigan's set up to have it, but it's just been like slow and weird rolling out. But
Yeah.
really, if you think Chicago is bar scene is going to suffer from people not using alcohol in the same rate that they were in 2019. And I think one of the true ways to ensure that it doesn't die or become something much less cool is by incorporating the cannabis users back, by like having a genuine scene for cannabis use and nightlife, which is just, I want it. Maybe it's just me. I want it.
It sounds awesome. It
I
sounds
see it
like
in
the
the data
future.
though. I see it in the data. It's not just me. I see it.
Hell yeah. What other any other data points that you specifically wanted to discuss? Anything that catches your eye or
I don't know. I always point to how crazy it is that like so many people use cannabis multiple times a day now. Pre-pandemic, it was like a third of users, and now it's like half. So it's heavy consumers are like the norm. Like stoners are the norm. People like to talk about these like microdosing mamas and things like that. And like, yeah, they exist, but they're spending less, they're using less. Like the heavy consumers are here in droves and here to stay.
and is there a reason you're collecting data for smart approaches to marijuana? I'm just joking.
No, well, no, our consumer data is really comprehensive. Like we ask them like, how often do you use? When?
Do you
Like the
get my joke?
occasions of use? No, I maybe I do. Why? What's your joke?
They're a prohibitionist group. So
Oh, I know.
they would be like, "Oh,
Oh, them.
daily
Yeah, that.
yeah, right, right." Get what I'm saying?
Oh. But
Sorry, bad
that's
joke.
the point is that it has the world come to a halt? Has all industry stopped?
There you
Because
go.
no, it hasn't. Like all these stoners are productive and being good people. And honestly, I just want to put that on a shirt. Like stoners are good people. It's
Yeah. Exactly. And that's kind of what I was trying to say. I didn't mean to say that like we've done it already, as in we've seen a lot of successful consumption businesses, but let me just say like you've probably had like a party where you have a few friends over, you have baked goods and you smoke weed and nobody's died. And a lot of people do that, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's like, how do we take that template and put it into a business? You
oh
know what
yeah,
I
I mean
mean?
that's what Profesh actually shows. It shows that
Fuck
like,
yeah.
hey, look, people want this. And like you ask, some of the bars we've been to have told us they've done 3 to 4 times the bar sales during our event. And it's like, and they were on there smoking a couple ounces. And look, nobody died, nobody passed out. And I'm all about safe approaches. And if you're gonna have dab bars and edibles, you better have
Sure.
somebody making sure. But at the end of the day, trust the people, trust the plant.
Organic, don't panic. Right.
Yeah, it's never killed anybody. You don't have special consumption watchers hanging out at bars, making sure that 19-year-olds with fake IDs don't throw up in the alleyway after. So you definitely don't need it for cannabis because it's never killed anybody.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take. Maybe that's so radical, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, hell yeah. Well, one thing that I guess before we close that I feel like we didn't necessarily, we got into a huge conversation about cannabis and cannabis data and cannabis policy because we were talking about your job and stuff. Did you want to talk about content creation and stuff? I mean, one of my main questions is like, we create cannabis content, but like, we've never had issues because for some reason nobody perceives it, and I know this sounds crazy, but nobody perceives it as cannabis content because it's very much like we're talking right now. It's not like we're like loading up a bong, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we've got the imagery or whatever, but like it's not. And yes, we've been smoking throughout, but I guess I wanted to ask you as a cannabis content creator, I know it's a hard like niche to fit. So
Yeah,
how's
there's
that been?
rules. There's a lot of
Yeah.
rules. Yeah, I've only had like a couple posts be issues, and it all had to do with like other pages and like people reporting.
Okay.
But
So just stupid shit.
just
Yeah.
stupid things. But I feel
So not
like
actually Instagram like being
no,
like,
Instagram
no.
not really getting at me too bad at all. But I think
Okay.
it's because so like basically when Instagram made the change, I don't know if you remember, but like all the cannabis hashtags suddenly we couldn't use in 2021 summer. I think it was like May. I actually went through and like removed every cannabis hashtag I ever had. And I feel like that prevented me a lot of headache later on because I would hear about people getting screwed over from old posts. And I also deleted
Mm,
anything that was like super nug shoddy. But really, if you want to be compliant on Instagram, follow the cannabis advertising laws of your state. I don't necessarily follow it all the time, but like that is the guidance, you know.
Yeah.
So here we are not allowed to show actual bud. We're not allowed to show actual consumption. You're not allowed to show the leaf. So you're not, so don't do those things, and you're probably gonna be better off than somebody who is one of the things I always say. But it's not fun to follow those rules. I still like smoking my one hitter and showing, what I bought here and there, but those are always the riskier posts. And I think that's to every creator to decide.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell yeah. I guess since you're reviewing cannabis in the state of Illinois, some people, I mean, a lot of people travel, but if you were to recommend people products in the state of Illinois, where would you point to?
I would point to Benton Harbor, Michigan.
Okay, there you go. I like the answer.
No, I don't know. I'm not a total hater. I'm here. I'm in case you asked me what I was smoking on, I brought some legal weed to say a good answer.
Okay,
But
what is it?
Days Off, the Magic Hour, where they combine two strains that apparently it's not a hybrid of the two strains. It is genuinely combining the two strains into a pre-roll.
Yeah. And it's still
Oh,
I still don't have an answer as to how they're able to do that, but yeah.
I didn't pay for this, so.
Mhm. No, you know what I mean though. Have you heard of the other? Is it Days Off the brand? There's a certain brand where they actually not just the joints, but they will in the same like a package. It'll be like
Oh yeah,
buds.
it's Days Off. It is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
And yeah,
I d-
they're genuinely two different nugs. Like I got one that was like purple nugs and like green nugs in the same one.
yeah, it just seems like they're really look. Okay, I'm not saying there's any huge validity to testing really, anyways, but they're really kind of showing that, and they're like really pushing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just don't. I'm also not like a test. The fact that this says it's 18%, it's that honest. It's being honest, I think, when you say that. Like anything under
Yeah,
20, I'm happy with. I personally don't like high THC strains. I think they're
sure.
lying anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, my big problem with Illinois is the remediation things. So it's like if
Hmm.
you want quality cannabis, it's rough. It's rough in Illinois.
Yeah, very
And I know
dry.
you've done a lot of episodes on that, a lot, and you've shared a lot of knowledge. I've probably watched like 3 or 4 times one of your episodes on remediation.
Really.
It's so
Thank you.
hard to get my fucking head around. It really is.
Well, for folks that haven't heard it, give them a little bit of background, I guess, just in
No,
case
no,
they
don't
miss.
make me do it. See, it's hard to get my head around. But and then I also
Okay.
I have my hot take that I always say it's all microwave weed, and everyone's like, "What?" But it's like maybe
Well,
it is.
okay, I can give the background and maybe you explain that then. So yeah, cannabis in Illinois or in most states, in fact, can be remediated and is, and even some companies are switching up their lingo. We had one of them come on the show recently, and they're calling it a kill step now. And I'm being very candid about it because it just sounds like there's
Pill
literally no
step.
difference. So it's a kill step because it's incorporated into your
Yeah,
SOPs, and they say they do it before testing. So they say remediation only happens if you get, if they flag your product, and so then you remediate it, right? But so they're saying, well, just do it before testing,
yeah, exactly.
so that you guarantee you pass the test, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, there's many different ways to do it. Ozone. I mean, look, honestly, you want to talk about the most basic form of remediation. If you cultivate outdoors like people do in Oregon or whatever, you might have like gnats or little pests because it's outdoors, whatever. And the simplest form of remediation is to hose your weed down. It's not bad.
yeah.
Get the bugs out of it and then let it dry out. Just yeah, it's not like it knocks
Yeah,
off a lot
I
of
do a
trichomes or
hydrogen
anything.
peroxide dunk on my outdoor. Same
Yeah,
for the same reason. And it's not, yeah. So I guess like the step of, and it goes back to supply. When there's so tight supply and it's so expensive to grow and you cannot risk losing a crop of cannabis, it makes
bingo.
sense to ensure that your crop will pass the stringent testing that this state has provided.
Yeah,
And so it's like I'm not trying to shade anyone growing cannabis in the state. People are growing great cannabis out here, like really great stuff, and it's just really not accessible or widespread is the issue because of these, you know, needing to get it out the door, needing to make sure you kill all the bacteria on it before you can it into a jar and then put it into a vault for who knows how long it'll sit. So
Hmm.
it's there's
I just wish, I think if anything, if I were to ask for anything, let's just make it so that it's required to be labeled. I'm not saying it can't happen. Let's just make it so that it's required to be
yeah.
labeled like we do with other foods.
I wonder if it was labeled, if everyone would just like start to accept it as a step and they're like, well, this is part of the industry that makes it safe. But like,
We do that with meat and nuts and stuff like that, for example. So why not?
yeah. I mean,
You know?
maybe so, yeah. Well, is that the acceptance? But I think it's a lot of too, it's like just knowing the difference between what's good and bad in cannabis is like different than food, is some of the
Yes.
arguments I've heard for, and especially I know what's going on in Oregon with the asparagus. They
Hmm.
want to, all those new regulations have now caused a whole new slew of like unknown pesticides affecting cannabis smokers. So it's like this or that or this or that. Then, do
Yeah.
you want to try weed? You want to make sure there's no bacteria? Like, are you having droves of people die from bacteria eat cannabis somewhere? Like, tell them
Right.
where are they? I don't
Right.
know.
And
Why are we helping them? Like,
if you just think about like back the culture when it was like in a brick, like think about the mold that would have generated from it being wrapped up the way they used to do it. Like I'm sure that, like, I'm not saying it's healthy for you. I'm saying like we could figure it out. Maybe we're
yeah. And I think like extreme contaminants like that, like, I don't even know if they should be able to be remediated. But in a system where you can't lose a crop,
Mhm.
you have to be. I hope one
Yeah.
day that we have a market, a federal system, and I don't want the federal government to. In my ideal world, they just get rid of the Controlled Substance Act. But so the
Thank
federal
you.
government,
Thank you.
right? If they made it, they can get rid of it. Like people, they only made it in the 70s. Like people, what? I'm
Yeah.
listening to music older than that. Like everyone is.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
yeah. But in an ideal world, Illinoisans will be able to get the weed in from other states because other states will have learned how to grow them and make them safe, make them awesome, make them exportable, and that hope it happens. The picket fence that's Illinois' limited licensing system is, who knows how long it'll last in a national system.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to scare some people saying that. That's actually a nightmare scenario I've tried to run by some of these people that will come on the show and advocate for license limitations. Because you're like, if you're shielding yourself from competition and then all of a sudden interstate commerce becomes a thing, it's like, are you going to compete with that farmer from Oregon? You know what I
Oh yeah,
mean?
exactly. I believe Wisconsin is the real possibility. I'm here for
Oh,
Wisconsin.
yeah.
Yeah,
Cheese and weed.
well, they have a great hemp infrastructure. A lot of the hemp cigarettes are from Wisconsin. And so these people are out there learning. And this is the thing, it's all about learning how to grow weed. Illinois did not have a medical system that let people learn how to grow weed like Michigan did. And it can go back to even that far. And so it's
Mhm.
like now Wisconsin is giving the people a chance to learn how to grow hemp, which is weed light essentially. And so if they're getting all this skill and if they become even more liberal than Minnesota, whoa, 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 Wisconsin and Illinois will just be yeah, just a regrettable decision made
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, let's before I guess I ask you one of my final questions, is there anything that you like wanted to mention today that we haven't necessarily got to that you wanted to talk about? I guess I
I
just
don't
been
know.
trying to give people more space.
Well, I definitely just that if you like what I say, follow me on things. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm cannabis analyst on Reddit now. That too. And made_content. But yeah, I just like to talk about the data, talk about the industry. So this has been a very just pleasant, nice conversation, Cole, for sure.
Good deal.
Nerding
Yeah.
out about the different parts of the industry that are cool and or otherwise not.
Hell yeah. Yeah, likewise. I've also enjoyed this conversation. And for folks that are listening that wanted to connect, we'll have the links to the things that she just mentioned in the podcast description, if that makes it easier for you to get connected. Cool. Well, hey, what I was gonna try to ask, because some people have been giving me flack. They're like, you talk about all the negatives all the time, and it's because I want to be like, I know we can do better. So I guess I wanted to end this on a positive note. Um, you can either take it as like, what are you hopeful for, or what is something we should be happy about, whichever direction you want to take it in, or both. Let's
Yeah.
end this on a positive note.
I guess I'm really hopeful for all the people who have like absolutely grinded to make it to where they are now, either opening or about to open. It's been like, as an analyst watching this industry and just seeing so little activity, the activity that has happened, it's just like a miraculous and a miracle, absolutely. And like going to the River Bluff grand opening, we were speaking with one of their owners, Donald, and he was just like, I put my life in this, not even knowing if I'd be able to open it. And luckily, he's one of the teams that was able to open it. But there are going to be so many teams that did that, and not it's not happening. So for the ones that are out here doing it, like total kudos. Like 1937 Group's launch is happening on the 17th of May, so tomorrow, but I know already would have happened. But it's just so that's what we want to keep seeing. Launches, 2-year anniversary parties, 3 or 4-year anniversary parties, just like keeping seeing the industry be around and grow. I think like the only way to do it is through the new operators. So it's a lot of pressure on them, but we're here
Hell
somehow.
yeah.
That's part of why High Folks Media wanted to be here. We wanted to be here so the new operators had like a way to tap into influencers who had the eyes of the people on them. And so that's what we're really grateful for, those new partners we can work with.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, cool. So yeah, folks, follow Made Content, High Focus Media, Profesh Sesh. We'll have all the links in the podcast description. Any upcoming events, like maybe in June or anything that you wanted to plug for folks that are I don't know. I'm just honestly throwing it out there. Is there anything coming up that?
Yeah, the June 7th Profesh Sesh is going to be at
Oh,
Emporium, Logan Square. So we have them
sweet.
monthly. It's the first Wednesday. So yeah, June 7th is the first Wednesday of June.
Boom.
But we'll definitely have some more things this summer involving food and sun and beach. And we just want to we want to bridge the gap between brand and consumer. That is one part of what we do too. So
I
making
love
sure
it.
that they know what the people want and the people are getting what they want.
I love it. Well, folks, check them out, get connected, show up, and have a good time. So, well, hey, we'll see you on the next episode of the Chillinois podcast. I hope y'all take care. Bye.